My name is Ethan, and I grew up in a quiet corner of America where the nights could stretch on forever, and the silence felt heavy enough to press against your chest, like a forgotten weight you never meant to carry, but somehow always did. Before next, please subscribe now. I was 17 when everything began to shift around me, like the world had decided to tilt just a little and leave me standing on ground that no longer felt steady or familiar. And even now I can still remember the smell of the wind that moved across the fields behind our old house, whispering things I could never fully understand. My school life was simple, and I kept to myself most days, spending long hours sketching in the back of my notebooks, because drawing was the only way I could breathe when the rest of the world felt too loud for someone like me. My dad worked long shifts at the local mill and came home tired every night, but he always made sure I had what I needed, even when we both knew he was giving more than he had. And I told myself I would someday find a way to make all that sacrifice mean something. But something strange began happening on the edge of those long quiet nights. Small things at first, little moments that should not have felt important, but somehow did, like the flicker of a shadow in a room where no one else stood, or the sudden ringing in my ears that came and went like a voice trying to call me from far away. I ignored it all until the night that everything changed, the night it pulled me into a story I was never ready to live, and it all started with the sound that echoed through my room. Even though I knew I was the only one home, the sound drifted through my room like a soft ripple moving across still water. And for a moment I thought it was just the old house settling the way it always did whenever the night got too cold or too quiet. But this time it felt different. It felt intentional, almost like someone was choosing the exact moment to reach out to me. I sat up in my bed, listening to the hum of the heater and the creak of the wooden floorboards beneath me. But underneath all of that, I could hear something else, something faint and steady, like a voice trying to form itself out of the darkness that pooled around the corners of my room. I pushed my blankets aside and stepped onto the cold floor, feeling a strange pull in my chest, as if someone were gently tugging me forward, guiding me toward a place I had never been before, even though I was still inside the house I had lived in my whole life. When I opened my bedroom door, the hallway lights flickered, but I told myself it was just the old wiring acting up again, the kind of problem my dad kept saying he would fix whenever he had a free weekend, but kept putting off because time was never enough for him. I walked slowly down the hallway, listening to that soft sound following me, almost like footsteps that were not mine, echoing each time I took a breath. And for a second, I wondered if maybe I was dreaming, though everything around me felt far too sharp and real for that. The air grew colder as I reached the end of the hallway, and I noticed the faint glow of the kitchen light slipping under the doorway in a pale line across the floor, which made no sense at all, because I knew I had turned every light off before going to bed. Still, that pull in my chest would not let go, so I pushed the door open and stepped into the kitchen, half expecting to see someone standing there waiting for me. But the room was empty, except for the strange glow coming from my phone, which was sitting on the table. Even though I clearly remembered leaving it on the charger in my room, I moved closer, and the sound grew louder, turning into a soft rhythmic pattern like someone breathing on the other end of the line. A steady inhale and exhale that made the hair along my arms rise, even though there was no call coming through, no notifications, nothing, just the screen lighting up with my reflection staring back at me. I reached out and picked up the phone, feeling the weight of it colder than usual, almost like it had been sitting outside in the winter air. And as soon as my fingers wrapped around it, the breathing stopped, replaced by the faint static whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. My voice cracked as I whispered hello, even though I knew I should not have spoken. But the moment the word left my mouth, the static shifted, almost as if responding to me, bending and curling into something that felt unmistakably human, something that felt like someone I should have recognized, but could not place. The whisper grew clearer, forming the shape of a single word that stretched through the static like a memory trying to force its way back into the world. And when that word finally reached me, it was my Name spoken in a voice I had not heard since the day everything in my life began to fall apart. The moment I heard my name whispered through the static, my whole body froze, as if the room itself had turned to ice around me, and for a long breath I could not move, I could not think, I could only listen. Because that voice, the one stretching through the thin veil of sound, was a voice I knew better than almost any other in my life. It was soft and warm, and carried the same gentle rise at the end of each syllable, the same way she used to call me in from the backyard during summer nights when fireflies lit up the field behind our home, and I would pretend not to hear her just so I could stay outside a little longer. But there was no mistaking it. It was my mom. She had been gone for years, buried on a cold gray morning. That felt so unreal. I still do not know how I made it through the service without falling apart completely, and now here I stood staring at a glowing phone screen, listening to her voice rise from static like a ghost pushing through a wall. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat felt tight, and the air seemed heavy, like something unseen was pressing against my chest, reminding me that this moment should not exist, could not exist. And yet there it was unfolding in front of me, as if time had bent to allow it. The static swelled again, shifting into gentle waves, and the voice came back clearer, this time drawn out in a long soft call that wrapped around me like an echo from another life, and my knees nearly buckled when I heard her speak my name again. I whispered Mom, barely forming the word, like it might break apart if I moved too fast, and the instant I said it, the light on my phone flickered, casting strange shadows across the kitchen walls, the kind of shadows that looked alive, even though nothing in the room had moved. The connection deepened, the static pulling tighter together, until it formed something sharp, almost like a breath caught between two worlds. And then her voice came again, this time urgent, as if she were trying to reach me before something else did. Ethan, listen. The words were faint, but unmistakable, and I felt my heartbeat slam into my ribs, because hearing her speak like that, hearing her say my name again after so many years, felt like someone had reached into the past and dragged a piece of it back into the present. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I wiped them away quickly, too afraid to look away from the screen even for a second, because a part of me feared that if I blinked, she would vanish back into the silence, and I would spend the rest of my life wondering if she had ever been there at all. The room grew colder. I could see my breath float in thin clouds in front of me, and I knew without understanding how that whatever this was, it was not simply a glitch or a trick or a dream. Something was reaching across a divide that should never be crossed, and for some reason it had chosen me. I stepped back slowly, gripping the phone tight in my hand, while the voice on the line wavered, like it was coming from far away through water or wind or something deeper than either. And even though her words faded in and out, I could still make out her tone, the warning in it, the fear. She was trying to tell me something important, something she did not want me to ignore. And then, just before the line went dark, she spoke 4 words that shattered every piece of the life I thought I understood, and left me standing alone in a silence that no longer felt empty at all. Those 4 words echoed through the kitchen like a tremor, shaking loose everything I thought was solid, everything I believed was safe. And even though the connection cut the moment she said them, the sound of her voice stayed inside my head, pulsing with a weight I could not escape. Do not trust him. That was all she said, just those 4 words. Nothing more, nothing that explained who she meant or why she was warning me from beyond a place no one should return from. But the fear in her voice was real, raw, full of something more powerful than anything she had ever shown me in life, and it sank into me like a cold blade. I stared at my phone, expecting it to light up again, or ring, or do anything to prove I had not imagined the entire thing. But the screen stayed dark, silent, heavy, as if whatever force had allowed her voice through had snapped shut again, leaving me trapped alone with the truth of what I had heard. The kitchen seemed still now, too quiet in a way that made the hair rise slowly along the back of my neck, and I felt that same pull in my chest again, but this time it did not guide me forward. It held me in place, warning me to stay exactly where I was, but I could not. I needed to breathe. I needed to think, so I moved back a step, but the floor creaked beneath me louder than it ever had before, the sound echoing up the hallway like someone or something else had heard my mother speak and was now listening to me. A chill slid across my shoulders, turning into a slow creeping sensation that made it feel like invisible eyes were tracking every breath I took, and the urge to run flooded through me harder than anything I had felt since the night we buried her. I walked out of the kitchen, forcing myself to move slow, even though my heart hammered fast enough to drown out my thoughts. And once I reached the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing, but every inhale only reminded me of that cold warning still ringing in my ears. Do not trust him. But who could she mean? The only person I talked to regularly besides my dad was my best friend Mark. But he had known me since kindergarten, and would never hurt me. At least I thought he would not. Or maybe she meant someone from school, a teacher, a stranger, someone I had not even considered. But nothing made sense, and yet deep down something in me whispered an answer I did not want to hear. My dad. The thought hit me hard enough to knock the breath out of my lungs, because the idea felt impossible. He had raised me alone. He had worked himself into exhaustion for me. He had done everything he could to keep our lives steady after she died. But my mother would never warn me without reason. I shook the thought off, pushing it away as fast as it came, because I could not believe that I would not believe that. But the more I tried to deny it, the louder her voice echoed inside me, wrapping around the possibility with a tightening grip. I walked toward my room, thinking maybe I could clear my mind if I just lay down for a moment. But halfway down the hallway, the lights flickered again, the same way they had earlier, except this time they did not stop flickering. They blinked fast, like a heartbeat, trying to warn me of something moving somewhere near. A soft thud sounded in the living room, then another slow, deliberate, steady, like footsteps, not mine, not imagined, real. And as the lights blinked one last time before the hallway fell into darkness, I realized I was no longer sure if I was alone in the house at all. The darkness in the hallway did not feel empty. It felt alive, thick, and breathing, like the air itself had grown aware of me and was waiting for me to make the next move. And for a moment I could not tell if the cold spreading across my skin came from the house or from something else standing just out of sight. I held my breath, listening hard, trying to pick apart every sound in the silence. And after a few seconds, the steady thuds came again, soft but unmistakable, each one spaced the same distance apart, like footsteps, moving slowly across the living room floor with purpose. I wanted to call out, ask if someone was there, but something deep inside me squeezed tight, warning me not to make a sound, because whatever was moving in next room was not someone, it was something. And every instinct I had screamed that it was not safe. The lights flickered weakly, then died again, and for a heartbeat I thought the entire house had gone still. But then I heard it, another sound, not a step this time, but a low, drawn-out breath, like something inhaled the darkness and held it close before letting it spill back out in a long whisper. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me flinch, and I looked down at the screen, glowing with a brightness that felt wrong, too bright for how dead the rest of the house had become. But there was no message, no call, nothing, just the same silent black background with my reflection staring back. Except it did not look like my reflection. The image staring up at me was my face, but the eyes were wrong, darker, too hollow, too aware. And even though I knew it had to be a trick of the light, I dropped the phone. It stepped back fast, bumping into the wall behind me. The footsteps in the living room stopped. Everything stopped. The house became so silent that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And I knew then that whatever had been moving was now listening to me, just like I had been listening to it. I reached out blindly, feeling for the doorknob to my room, but before my fingers touched it, a faint glow appeared at the end of the hallway, coming from the living room doorway. A soft pulsing light, like someone was standing there holding a small lantern, swaying it back and forth. I squinted, trying to see who or what it was, but the figure in the glow did not move closer. It did not speak, it only stood there unmoving. And as my eyes adjusted, I realized the shape was wrong, too tall, too thin, too still, like a shadow stretched into a person. A voice rose behind me, then a whisper so quiet I almost thought it came from inside my own chest. But when I turned, I saw nothing, only the dark hallway stretching behind me, yet the whisper continued, growing clearer, more insistent, as if someone stood inches from my ear. Ethan, run. My heart slammed against my ribs, because I knew that voice. It was the same one that had spoken through the static, the same one that had warned me moments earlier. And even though I could not see her, I could feel my mother there, close enough to touch, urging me to move. I did not think. I just turned and sprinted down the hallway, racing toward the back door of the house. But as soon as my feet hit the kitchen floor, the pulsing glow behind me surged brighter, filling the hallway with a blinding wash of light. And that was when I heard the footsteps again, except this time they were not slow or soft. They were fast, charging after me with a sound that shook the walls, like something huge had been waiting for me to run, and now it was coming to take me. And just as I reached for the door handle, a cold hand wrapped around my shoulder, stopping me in a way that felt nothing like human touch at all. The cold hand on my shoulder froze every breath inside me, locking my body in place as if time itself had tightened around my ribs. And for a moment I could not move or speak or even think, because the touch did not feel like skin. It felt like winter pulling itself into the shape of a hand. The footsteps behind me stopped. The house fell into a stillness so deep it pressed into my ears, and the glow that had flooded the hallway dimmed until only a faint shimmer trailed behind me, like the last flicker of a dying candle, trying to keep the dark away. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for whatever was about to drag me backward. But instead, the cold grip loosened slowly, gently, almost like it was letting go by choice. And when I opened my eyes, the kitchen around me had softened, the air no longer sharp or heavy, but calm in a way that felt unreal. A warmth spread across my back, not from a heater, not from the room, but from something behind me, something familiar, something that eased the fear pushing through my chest. And when I turned, I saw her, my mother, not as an apparition, not as a shadow, not as static whispering through a phone, but standing there in a soft glow that made her look like she was formed from the morning sun itself. Her hair, drifting like it was held by a breeze. I could not feel her eyes warm the way I remembered them from every quiet night she tucked me in when I was a child. She reached out her hand, and for the first time in years I felt no fear, no confusion, no weight, only a grief so deep and gentle it felt like breaking and healing at the same time. I tried to speak, but she shook her head, slowly telling me without words that I did not need to. And as she rested her hand on mine, the cold that had wrapped around me melted away like frost under the first light of day. Behind her, the tall, thin shadow that had chased me flickered, as if the glow surrounding her was burning it away, unraveling it thread by thread, until it dissolved into a soft gray and vanished completely, leaving nothing behind, not even a sound. My mother stepped closer, her presence warm enough to bring tears to my eyes, and in that tender glow she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine the way she used to when I was afraid of thunderstorms, when I was too young to understand anything except how safe she made me feel. Her voice rose, then not sharp, not warning, this time soft, like the hush of a calm river, carrying only peace. "You are not alone, Ethan." The words warmed every corner of me, and the grief inside me loosened, finally letting me breathe the way I had not since the day she left the world behind. And I felt something shift in the house, in the air, in myself, like the weight I had been dragging for years had quietly lifted. The glow around her softened, growing thinner, as if she were stepping back into a place I could not follow. But before she faded completely, she pressed her hand over my heart and smiled, the same gentle smile she wore every morning before she left for work, when she would whisper, "Take care of your heart, little one." And then she was gone, leaving the kitchen warm, the house quiet, the night no longer a thing filled with fear, but simply night. I sank to my knees, letting everything wash through me, the fear, the relief, the grief, the love. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe, truly safe, and as I stood and walked toward the dawn rising outside my window, I knew she had not returned to haunt me, but to guide me one last time, leaving me with a peace strong enough to carry through every tomorrow waiting ahead of me. If you like story, please click subscribe.